All right. I'm good to go. You good to go?
I'm good to go. Yeah.
Unless and 3, 2. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 36 of the Faitheism Project podcast. My name is Alan Katz. I have always been grateful to Hebrew School for making me the atheist I am today.
And my name is Randy Lovejoy, and I am a virtual pastor and storyteller. Virtual meaning working online, not meaning that I don't really exist. So I just want to clarify that for everyone.
I can attest that Randy exists. He thinks, therefore he is.
Although you haven't seen me in well over a year in person, in the flesh. So,
well,
you're going to have to test that, I could just, what, Max Headroom, or what was that guy way back?
Yeah, it was Max Headroom. You could be Randy Headroom.
Let's move on.
Indeed. So today we're going to talk about what has life with a capital L taught you so far, assuming that life's taught you anything.
Hopefully it has. If life has not taught you anything, we need to have a conversation. Give me a call. Let's talk about it. So.
There's that old joke. How do you make God laugh? Tell him your plans. And whether you believe in an actual deity or not, there's something that happens the minute we make plans. Something in the universe suddenly kicks on and decides it needs to play with us. Oh, you have plans, do you? You got dreams, do you?
And one of the proverbs in the Hebrew Testament that I'm sure is reflected in other cultures as well is something to the effect of man makes his plans, or humans make their plans, but the Lord guides their steps, which it's a similar way of recognizing that there's a disconnect between what we plan and what actually happens. Yes.
The best laid plans and the road to hell and all of that.
Yes. Yes. Multiple.
As I sat down to draw up my list of, what has life taught me?
Yeah.
I came up with kind of 5 answers. Yeah, 5 things kind of struck me, and one thing kind of struck you. In essence, all right, the 5 things that struck me, I'll just lay them out.
Sure.
And
go for it.
One of them you connected to directly. The first thing that I learned, and again, I'll come back and we'll revisit them at length. Creative collaboration is a wonderful thing. You should do it. That's 1. 2, life has taught me that success teaches you nothing. Failure, on the other hand, it's got a lesson plan for every day of your life. 3, the more perspective you can get, the better. 4, consciousness might just transcend everything. And 5, the most important thing of all, no matter what, is love.
Amen, brother.
All right. Now, how I learned these things, we will go back and revisit, because each of them came at after one of those lesson plans.
Right.
What you, on the other hand, a lot of how there's a key event in your life that really is the biggest pivot, as you've talked about it, aside from meeting Cheryl.
Yeah. I mean, I think what happened to me when I thought about this topic was, okay, there's so many life lessons. Like, I mean, I remember I was writing out stories that I would tell that I thought others might enjoy. And it went to like 4 pages. And I'm like, okay, I mean, just to the story title, not even the story, So I was like, all right, there's a lot of life. I mean, I'm learning constantly, every day, all the time. And I'm not saying I've learned more than somebody else. I'm just saying maybe I was in remedial life class. I don't know, but I've needed more work in terms of learning about life. But what it dawned on me was that this one event, and I think we've all probably got some events like that, but there was one event in my life that really pulled a bunch of those stories together, or happened in that same location, and taught me a bigger lesson. So what I thought was, well, you know, even though we don't limit ourselves too much on the podcast, but we've never gone 2 hours, have we? I mean, we always cut at like, you know, an hour and a half is the most we ever do. But anyway, but you know, it's like, well, I want to focus.
There's only so much time to edit these damn things.
Exactly. So that's, I just thought I want to try to focus on one location where I was for 3 months and try to break out some stories from there. So yeah.
The first big lesson. I'll jump in there because I think probably
I think let's work on your first 3, because the third one is what mine's about. So let's do your first 3, and then I'll dive into mine. How about that?
If mine will launch into yours. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, that'll work.
Right.
That works.
You know, I've been a writer my whole life. I've been theatrical my whole life. And you know, when you do things with theater people, that's always a collaborative experience.
Yeah.
But just because you're doing things in a collaborative way doesn't mean you're really being the best possible collaborator that you can be. And that's quite a different animal to be a really good collaborator. I've been extraordinarily lucky over the course of my career. I've gotten to work with the most remarkable people, and one of the most remarkable people that I was fortunate enough to work with and for is the filmmaker Bob Zemeckis. And he was one of my bosses when I was doing Tales from the Crypt. And Bob, bar none, is the most amazing collaborator I will ever get to work with. I accept this.
I mean, what were a couple of things that made him so good at it? I mean, can you name a few of those things?
It's the nature of how Bob approaches the collaborative process. Now, filmmaking is a collaborative process. It demands so much talent from so many people.
Yeah, I can imagine. Right.
When I went aboard Tales from the Crypt at the beginning of the 3rd season, that was supposed to be the last. And about midway through the season, my partner at the time, a guy named Gil Adler, and I, we reinvigorated the series. We reinvigorated the Crypt Keeper, and that's really what, at the end of the day, what kept the series alive. But midway through the season, because we were getting suddenly big stars to do our show, HBO changed its mind and didn't pull the plug on the series. In fact, they ordered 2 more seasons. And so as we approached the end of the first season that I was aboard the show running it, we were in rather a celebratory mood. And the last episode was going to be Bob Zemeckis' anyway, since Bob Zemeckis and Joel Silver and Dick Donner and Walter Hill, you know, big filmmakers who are executive producers. Yes, it had been accepted that Bob was going to be the last episode, but now not the last episode forever. It was the last episode of the season, but still Bob had planned big. And Bob had wanted to do an homage to one of his favorite films, a World War I epic, Stanley Kubrick's Paths to Glory, and which is a World War I trenches, and it starred Kirk Douglas.
Okay.
And it was made in the late 50s. And Bob wanted to kind of do an homage to it in our little half-hour Tales from the Crypt show. He also wanted Kirk Douglas. And the problem was the script that we had as I came aboard, which had been written by the previous producers, this wasn't good enough to attract Kirk Douglas, which was key to Bob being happy about doing this. So as I was the new guy in charge of all the writing on the show, Bob came to me, and the first time I got to work with Bob, and Bob said, "Yeah, I need you to, we need to make this better because I need to get Kirk." And okay. And I sat down and I worked it and I rewrote it, and we got Kirk.
Awesome.
And Bob was really generous about that. But when a couple of years go by, and we got Kirk Douglas and Dan Aykroyd, and we recreated World War I France and Simi Valley, and we blew stuff up, and it's rather a big episode. It's called Yellow. Anyway. So Seasons go
check
by.
it out.
Bob is going to do the another show, the end of a season, and he asks me to write it for him. All right. I go up to Bob's house. We have lunch. We're going to talk about what he wants his episode to be. What shall we write for him? And we finish lunch, push it aside, and Bob says, "All right. All I know is I want to do a completely subjective camera show from the point of view of a dead guy. That's it. That's what I want to do." So a dead guy's point of view of 30 minutes. Yeah, something like that. All right. Yeah, that's it. Of course, we'll have to figure out how he got to be a dead guy. Yeah, it'll be part of the story. But there's a great Hitchcock film called Rope that he also wanted to borrow from, which is the conceit in Hitchcock's Rope is that it's all one long shot. Okay. There are a couple places where he's had to break it up because the film magazines were only so large. You couldn't roll it like contemporary video. You had film mags. So there are clever ways where suddenly as we're moving past someone's back and their back fills the frame, their black, whatever their black costume fills the frame, that's where they change mags. All right. So he wanted to, there was some of the same filmmaking cleverness also, but he wants to show totally from the point of view of a dead guy. Oh, and one more detail. The dead guy needs to be played by Humphrey Bogart. Oh, so as we move around from place to place and then we pass a reflective surface and we see this character's face in the reflective surface, it's going to be Bogart. We're going to have to cut in film clips of Bogart where he's saying stuff. And we're going to have to make the story work that we get into that film clip, right, and then we get out of it. So these things, these non sequiturs are going to have to make sense in our universe. This is part of what Bob wants. He's asking, really frankly, for the impossible, and he knows it. And so he says, "Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm thinking." And how are we going to do this? Now, here's the key. He didn't say, "Here's what I want. You go do."
I was just going to say, it's not go do it. It's
he
how
said,
are we going?
How are we
That's good.
going to do this?
That's good.
Bob had plenty of ideas in his head. He wasn't, he
right.
Now, just for reference, what Bob was trying out in our episode of Tales from the Crypt was stuff he actually went and used in Forrest Gump. He was testing out some ideas he had for Forrest Gump in our episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were we were his training camp for some of those
beta test ideas. Almost. Right. Yeah.
So all right, but that's as we then sat and began to talk, this impossible idea became less and less impossible. Now let's go forward a couple of weeks. The script gets written, and we get a really great cast. We get John Lithgow, we get Isabella Rossellini.
Wow.
And oh, that's incredibly exciting. And Isabella, what makes it even more exciting is Isabella decides she wants to play, because the dead guy is Humphrey Bogart. She wants to play her character like her mom. Ingrid Bergman, who played against Bogart in Casablanca. Yeah. So from the point of view of a little film nerd who grew up watching and loving this stuff.
Yeah.
You're suddenly I'm in the middle of this. This is like,
I'm right in the middle of it all. This is so
talk about a pig in excrement. Oh my God, that is. Oh, yes. Oh my God. All right, so we have a great cast. And we never, on Tales from the Crypt, we really did a lot with a very little bit of money. Directors got 5 days to prep and 5 days to shoot. That was it. But because it's Zemeckis, we break the rules. And we're giving Bob a day to rehearse. Now, it's not the cast that he wants to rehearse, it's the crew.
Oh, wow.
And so we bring the entire 50-person crew onto our 4-wall set. Now, because it's a subjective camera, what that means is the camera is, we will only see it from the character's eyeball point of view, both their eyes. We will never go outside of it. We will never do coverage. We will never see them.
Okay.
Only from their point of view. So they have to be able to go everywhere in every direction.
Wow.
And so as Bob takes us into, we have now built what's called a 4-wall set.
Okay.
And that means 4 walls, not 3 walls, and then a false wall that we pulled because that's where all the crew and that's where Video Village is and where the director is sitting. It's 4 walls. and ceiling, and of course the floor. Can't do it without the floor. So that the camera really can go anywhere at any particular time. And Bob now has the entire crew, and including craft services who do not normally get invited to such things. But Bob wants everyone to be part of this conversation because it's a tricky question. And he says, all right, everyone. And all of us crowded into space. He says, all right, the shot's going to start over here. And he goes over to a place where, yeah, this shot's going to start. And he begins to walk around. And I think we go here and here. And then, this happens. So we got to go, all the way over here and then here and then here. And I think the shot's going to end up somewhere like over here. Yeah, okay, yeah. And he turned and he looked at us and he said, okay, guys, how are we going to do this? And you could come up with an idea that didn't work entirely. You couldn't come up with a bad idea. And because suddenly we were all there and asked this question, right off the bat, everybody got invested.
Yeah.
This wasn't Bob's problem. This was our problem. And, of course, Bob had the solution in his head, but yeah, there were some great thoughts and hey, but what if became part of this collaborative process. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the trick, and this is the thing that I ultimately learned from my experience of working with and for Bob Zemeckis. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you collaborate with people, if you're doing it the right way, everyone comes out better.
Yeah.
The goal is to make everyone else better, including and especially yourself. So as I have lived my life, I knew as I was having my Zemeckis experience that life with a capital L was teaching me. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, I took notes that day. Fortunately.
That's good.
All right.
I love that.
Now, having been in the film business,
yes,
this has taught me something else. Well, life via the film business has taught me a lot. Getting into the film business is really, really hard. Yeah, it's really hard. But that is nothing compared to staying in the film business. That is the killer. That is because once you've tasted the sweet manna from heaven,
then then reality is going to hit, or I don't know, whatever the word is going to hit at some point.
It's like heroin addiction. It is like heroin addiction. But the thing is, success teaches you nothing. It really, really teaches you nothing. You get it into your head, as I did, because when I got here in 1985, and I got really, really lucky, I tasted success within 4 months. Yeah. Within 4 months of getting here, I had my first taste of success. I didn't make a ton of money, but it was success.
Sure. Yeah.
And I sold a screenplay, and I was set up, and I was doing revisions to it, and I was it felt like I was in the movie business. Yeah. It got the idea into my head, one, that money was what mattered. Mistake number one. But it got this notion into my head that excuse my French, my shit did not stink. This is not true. The only thing that happens is, of course, that yes, your excrement does continue to pong. The only difference is you don't know it. Success teaches you nothing. Failure, on the other hand, failure, even more than life itself, filled with lessons, great, wonderful lessons, if only you're willing to learn from them.
Yeah. And that's the challenge, isn't it? You don't have a lot of choice about going through failure, but you do have a choice about what's the impact going to be on you.
Well, what will you do with the lemons life has handed you? Will you simply look at them and say, I don't know what to do with lemons, or shall you make daiquiris? Yeah. You make, not just daiquiris, and hey, maybe you can figure out a way to fly an airplane on lemon juice. And there you are. You're suddenly You're Bill Gates.
That's right.
All right. Finally, number three, which also not so much from the film business, but from surviving,
Yeah.
surviving through to yeah, surviving the film business. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
I would say is what suddenly made me realize how important this is, and that is
Yeah.
perspective. The more perspective that you can get, the better. And how life teaches you perspective. Oh, that's where things can get, on the one hand, they can get messy, but they can also get, well, expansive and expressive.
Sure.
Well, then it can get like what happened to you.
Yeah. 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 And that, having grown up going, living in some other countries, there was a seed planted in me that told me I need to experience other people's experiences of life, that there's huge value in trying to see life through other people's eyes.
Where did that come from, a particular place, or do you think that was simply just something part of you?
I thank my parents for that. They were the reason we moved to Australia and England as when I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
They also were intentional about not moving into kind of the American ghettos in Sydney and London as well,
Mm-hmm.
which meant that we made friends with people of other countries, which meant, yeah, and that was a key thing. And then on top of that, especially, when we lived in Australia, it's a long plane flight to Australia. Well, my parents would always work out ways that we could stop at other countries when we'd go back home to visit and go to Australia. So, we went to Fiji. I remember actually meeting the headmistress of my sister's school in Australia. We happened to be in the airport in Fiji at the same time. We got to Indonesia, we got to Malaysia, these places that for me as a child raised in Texas, they were very different, way more different than were, even Australia and England, and it was just a realization of, wow, this is a big world, and wow, people live in very different situations, but I loved it. They were always good experiences.
Perspective. So that's instant. Travel is instant perspective.
It is. And I'd say that's the number one thing I'd urge those who have not had the opportunity to travel is make it a point to travel and go to a place that's really different. Not just slightly different, but find a place that's really different for you and go, because you're going to learn all sorts of things. Will you fail? Yes, you will screw up in all sorts of tiny little ways that are just more embarrassing than anything else, because you don't know the culture.
Yeah, the diametric opposite of your comfort zone is where you should visit, really. And
yes,
going, lovely as Hawaii is.
Yeah. Right.
Lying on a beautiful Hawaiian beach.
Yeah. Go to if you're wanting to go to, once COVID kind of dies down in Brazil, go to a place called Iguazu Falls, or Falls do Iguazu. It's beautiful, it's incredible, but it's a different country with a different culture, and a place to really learn. So the story I wanted to tell was that I think I mentioned before that I read a book called The City of Joy.
You have referenced that book many times.
Yes. So the book,
I hope we're selling copies for them.
I hope so too. I mean, and don't watch the movie. Read the book. They hacked the
Isn't that always the way?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Movie makers, they're crap.
Dang script writers.
Yeah.
Just stink. Anyway, but what caught my attention was that it was in a city called the City of Joy, which is kind of ironic, and there was extreme poverty in India. And so what I thought was, all right, when I graduate from college, I want to live with the poorest people I can live with, just to try to see life through their eyes as best as I could. So after after college, I was in Mexico, and as I'd been in Mexico for a while, and they gave us opportunities to choose where we wanted to go next. They only had 2 slots for this island called Amapala in Honduras, or La Isla del Tigre is another name of it. And they warned us that it was going to be a really hard place, and it was going to be really poor and all of that. And I was like, yes, this is it, man. So I dove right in, right? So I entered into this world on this island as an American individual who wanted to just experience life through other people's eyes, right? So, and I just kind of saw it like we all do. I'm the individual entering into this world that is kind of my world for learning and for experimentation, right?
Did you just want to live there? I mean, what was there anything aspirational beyond just being there?
Well, you know, I wanted to, again, I wanted to try to experience what life looks like and feels like and is like for people that are born in a very different situation than I happen to be born on this planet. Mm-hmm. And to try to learn whatever it is I could learn from that experience, because I just realized my experience on the planet is a minority experience. It's not what the majority of the people on this planet now or in the past have experienced. And I wanted to just experience that and see what that would do to me in terms of my ideas, thoughts, perspectives, and all that. Now, the way that I ended up going there was in connection with a church that was a denomination that was working in that part of Honduras. And it turned out that we were kind of the last ditch effort by them. They basically given up already, but they just said, oh, there's 2 young people, let's send them in there and see if they can do anything, because they had worked really hard, learned multiple lessons of things like when you find a good leader on an island, you don't send them to the US for training as a pastor, because then they won't want to go back for multiple reasons and it messes them up and they're not very good anymore at doing that job. So they brought the education to this person that they had identified. And then they also learned you can't just start them when the island's really poor, because then they won't have money to eat. So they set him up with a boat for a fishing business so that he could have a fishing business and be the pastor for, you know, a sustainable period of time with this church. They'd done everything right. And then the guy ran off with a choir member and took his boat and his fishing business somewhere else and left the church high and dry. And that was kind of the last ditch effort for them. It was like, okay, we're done. But then like, oh, there are these 2 young people that'll show up for 3 months. Throw them in there. Yeah, I'm sure it was more than that, but it was like, throw them in there and see what they can do. So, so that was, you know, already as I came in from reading City of Joy, I was entering into a story that had already been going on for quite some time from the religious side of it, right? But that was just one part of the whole web of relationships and interactions that formed life on this island. It was overlapped also with nationalism or nationality, you know, that the sense of nationhood, because the island where we went to was actually claimed by both El Salvador and Honduras. They both said it was theirs. At this point, Honduras had the upper hand, and the only reason I knew that was that the government workers, when we got to the port city, in a dugout, motorized but dugout canoe that took us to the port city, they were all Honduran. So it was like, okay, so Honduras, at least right now, has it. But the people that we worked with were El Salvadoran. So you can guess what kind of legal status they had on that island at that point, because they were caught in this battle between 2 different countries about whose island this was. Then that overlapped with issues of politics and power, because the people, the El Salvadorans that were on that island.
May I ask this? May I ask this question?
Please.
Now, this island, how big is this island?
Oh man, that is a great question. I should have looked that up ahead of time. What I can tell you is that we walked the island in a given day. There was one day a week when we go visit multiple villages in the island.
So it's not a big island.
No, it's walkable, and it has a dormant volcano. It's around a dormant volcano. So you got the volcano and then kind of the lowlands around it.
So you were living under the volcano. Okay.
Exactly. So that's, that's it. Now, the interesting thing about that volcano was that there was regular helicopters, US helicopters, flying to the top of the dormant volcano. And what we found out was that was a listening station into Nicaragua at the time, because the Sandinistas were in charge of Nicaragua. And as we know, there was a global battle going on between leftists and, what, capitalists or Westerners, I don't know what you call it, but there was a global struggle going on, and that was represented on the island. Not just that, but at the same time, the El Salvadoran refugees were actually, they were there as refugees because El Salvador had been in a really, like, a bad civil war for more than 10 years between a military-led junta that the US supported for similar reasons as they were listening into Nicaragua. They were worried about leftists getting into their orbit, and
heavens.
Yeah, well, and there was a leftist Farabundo Martí National Liberation Front that was fighting the government. And so a lot of, what typically happens in power struggles like that is the everyday people end up, having to run for their lives. So they had all run there. And then just to that whole kind of idea of nation, but then global politics became very real to me when I walked into the home, the thatched hut of one family that attended one of the churches we were trying to help. And the kids looked at me and started crying and ran away. And I'm just like, what the heck? I'm usually okay with kids. So what's going on? I looked over at the parents and they looked kind of sheepish. And then they said to me in Spanish, they said, well, sorry, when our kids are bad, we tell them that the gringos are going to come and take them away. So when they saw you walk in, they thought they'd finally been caught on whatever they were doing, right? So, and that goes, obviously, there's a longer history, and we could get into that, but let's not, about, U.S. involvement in Central America. But it just showed me the complexity of when we look at a situation, and we say, well, here's the answer. It's like, actually, make sure you understand everything that's going on, because there's all these layers of things that are happening on the island. So two other layers, okay? I appreciate your patience on this one. There are two other layers, all right? So one of them was that the issues of politics, power, all of that, combined with the poverty of the people that were there, to have a really negative impact on the environment on that island. They were not disconnected. One was that the island, the first time we walked from one village to the next, I almost passed out, because it was like I was walking through a tumble dryer the whole time. I mean, it was that hot, a tumble dryer on high. Okay. So it was that hot.
Actually, not just the tumble dryer itself.
That's right. And I actually ended up having to drink water out of a well that everybody knew was contaminated. We had iodine drops. I put some iodine drops in, but I had to have something to drink because I was like dizzy and all of that. So the reason it was so hot, though, is because they had cut down almost all of the trees, except one little part of the island. They'd cut down almost all the trees for wood, to cook food, that was their energy source. Renewable, yes. And yet, wood has a much larger carbon footprint than even oil does. I mean, it's worse than oil is in terms of the carbon dioxide that it emits. So that was one problem they had. They had a larger carbon footprint than you would think, because they don't have cars or anything, but they're burning wood for every meal. So, or coal. Sometimes you'd see coal, but mostly it was wood. Okay. So then I had to painfully watch. We lived the bright spot of this deal. I lost 30 pounds while I was there in 3 months. The bright part of it was we lived on this island called Playa Negra. I mean, this beach called Playa Negra. And it was a black sand beach from volcanic, stuff. So it was beautiful. But one time we got up and we saw a sea turtle going back to the ocean. It had laid its eggs. It spent the night laying its eggs. And I watched just in horror as the villagers, before the sea turtle even got back to the ocean, they had dug up all of the eggs, because they could get, at that time, like they said, $8 or $9 US per egg, which for them was a massive amount of money. And so, of course, they were going to dig up the eggs so they could feed their kids and give them a nicer piece of meat or whatever. But it was, you know, again, you see that overlap of environmental issues, poverty issues, civil war issues, geopolitical issues, and they're all connected. You can't just pull one out without making a bad move in Jenga, you know, and it all starts to collapse. So the, you know, the last thing I wanted to share with you, I think you'll love this one. Okay, so we're out on the beach, and we're you know, with some of the villagers, and suddenly these really nice speedboats, about 5 of them, come over from the El Salvadoran side and land on Playa Negra. The villagers didn't know who these people were, you know. They hopped out, bikinis, beach balls, huge picnic baskets overloaded with food, bags of chips, frisbees, all of this. And, you know, there's a part of me saying, oh man, you know, I probably lost 20 pounds by then eating beans and moldy bread, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, what I'd give for a picnic basket. Oh, wow, women in bikinis. Hey, people on I know this world. This is my world, you know, and wanting to like hang out with them, which I probably could have if I'd asked, you know.
Yeah.
But they, you know, but by the end of the day, I was completely ashamed of myself because they left at the end of the day. They had never talked to the villagers. They never even asked if they could like play in their front yard, basically. They left trash all over the place. And as I watched the villagers kind of digging through the trash, hoping that there'd be something left that they could repurpose, I was just like, the world is kind of blowing my mind right now because I'm seeing this on the island, but when I go home, the island's still here. I may not have to think about it, but the reality is still here that I'm living one way and a lot of other people are living another way. And I don't know how to make this stuff work. Those people were wealthy El Salvadorans who had come for a vacation day on this island and then left from there. So, you know, the point being that there's so many layers of things going on when we try to deal with an issue. And the other point being that it's actually really hard to get inside the mind of other people, like really inside the mind. And it was this last story.
Unless they tell you what they're thinking, you can't.
Right. Really. And even then, you know, it's like when I was in Mozambique, we learned Portuguese, which was the trade language. And that was what they had in the worship services was Portuguese. But as I was talking to one of the older Mozambicans, they said, you know, you're really not going to know what's going on in our hearts until you learn the tribal language. And it was like, oh yeah, but I just learned one language. You're asking me to learn another one now that's really different. It's not a Romance language. It's totally different from, you know, but so even talking to the people on that island, the El Salvadoran refugees, what they would actually tell me versus what they would say to each other, it's hard to know. But here's where I learned that there was just no way I was ever going to understand fully the plight of these poor refugee folks. And it was that one day I went into you know, by my hammock that I would sleep on because, you know, it was so hot there. We just slept in hammocks, no sheets or anything. Sure. I went there, looked in my suitcase, and my passport was gone. And I'm like, okay, this is not good. I'm on an island a long way from a major city, much less the capital, much less the embassy. I don't have any identity papers, but I thought I better take off. So I decided, all right, I told my roommate, hey, I got to take off back to Tegucigalpa, you know, and the capital, and I've got to get another passport. So I walked alone back to, you know, the port city, which took a few hours. Then I got in that dugout, motorized dugout, took it across the water to the mainland.
How old are you as you're doing this?
I was 18. Yeah, 18.
All right.
Wait, is that right? Wait a minute. 18. No, that would be college. I was 21. 21.
Okay,
21.
But still, yeah. 21.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You have no personal identification on you.
No personal identification.
Okay. Nobody aside from you knows where you are on the planet.
Well, no, there's an organization I was working with.
Yeah. But as you without any identity are going from the island to your destination so as to get papers as you are making this trip.
Yes.
Nobody knows where you are. If you vanished between your origination point and your destination point.
Yeah, my roommate would have eventually said, "Hey, I wonder where Randy is. He was supposed to be back a couple of days ago. Maybe we should try to figure out how to look for him." So yeah.
Now, granted, this organization, yes, they knew roughly where you were, but as you were making this trip across, this country, did it occur to you I'm not even the.
Well,
I don't even know what to call it. How
benefit of
deformity of what
right,
you were doing.
Right. The benefit of being 21 is that I think your mind isn't fully formed and until a couple of years after that, if I remember correctly. It's something like 22, 23.
It's the male. We are missing a key brain structure.
Yeah,
the one that tells us, if I do this, it'll hurt.
Yeah. So, well, exactly, because I got onto the mini bus that kind of went cross country to the main road, where you would then catch the tour bus, which was totally full. So I ended up sitting on the back, like the back engine kind of it. I mean, I was inside, but it was a flat thing, no seat belt, no nothing, sitting on the back of that. To the point that by the time I got to Tegucigalpa, I had a major sunburn in a certain place we won't define, because I didn't realize how hot the engine was underneath me. But anyway, I got there and then went straight to the U.S. Embassy. And this is where I realized I'm never going to be able to understand exactly what it's like, because I went to the U.S. Embassy. I walked right past the massive line of people, Hondurans, that actually had papers, and most of them actually had money in a bank account, because you have to have some money in a bank account to get a visa to go to the U.S. I mean, that's true for any country, but so the people on the island wouldn't have even made it to get in the line. But I walked right past everybody. The Marines welcomed me in. There was somebody working with the embassy that was like, "Oh, you lost your passport? Yeah, come with me." Went to a private office, sat down, filled out the paperwork, and I left.
How was the meal they served you?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was amazing. And in a sense, it made me realize, wow, it is amazing to be an American globally right now, because wow, but as I left with, new identity papers, and the passport was going to be sent to a certain place, when it was done and all that. As I left, I just realized, okay, that citizenship as an American is something that, it's a power that I have, that any American citizen has, that is simply I simply cannot understand what it would be like. I mean, if I had been I don't know, I'm just going to think of a smaller country with less power in Honduras, say. So if it was like, if I was from Guinea-Bissau or something, right, and lost my passport,
sure,
that would be a very different scenario than being an American, because even if I'd gotten lost partway through, and eventually the embassy would have heard about it, they would have somebody trying to track me down. I mean, that's, there's government pressure and all. I mean, that's what you do. You find the American citizen, right? So it's just that amount of power. I just realized I can never completely understand. And I think, to be relevant to an immediately felt need, that is definitely where me as a white male, I can never fully, I mean, I'm getting this the right way? I can sympathize with the plight of an African-American male, but I can't ever completely get what it is that they've experienced, because of not just my skin color, but just a whole story that has gone on before, that I'm playing a different role. I mean, I'm playing a different role in the story, and it's not like I can just switch roles and suddenly everything's okay. It's like, no. I'm in this. I'm committed to this story. I'm a part of it. And
Americans are like Romans.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
We have, and ours is not a physical empire. It is it's a cultural empire.
Yeah.
That we have spread across this planet, American culture.
Yeah. And so I'm going to conclude mine, and we'll jump back to yours. But the thing that taught me, as I look back on it, one of the things I learned was any given issue is way more complicated than we think it is. Number one, that there's all sorts of levels, that if you want to just be simplistic about something so that you can get a simplistic solution and feel good about your actions, odds are you're not going to actually change anything. But if you're willing to dive down deep into the layer upon layer and history and different things interacting on a particular situation, then you're going to be able to start to name some things that can be changed in a way that have potential to make it the kind of future that I think we all want. But if we just stay simplistic in terms of the way we look at the world and problem solve, and think that there's just some quick fixes we could pull off and then everything would be great, that's not helpful. That to me, that's not how life works, because I am one little piece of a huge chessboard, or however you want to look at it. And yes, I can move as a pawn and have an impact, but if I acknowledge the whole game and am trying to look at all of it and then figure out my move, I can be way more effective than just, yeah. So anyway, that's my bottom line on that one.
But that takes me to the fourth thing that I feel like
Yes.
life has taught me, which is,
Yes.
yeah, that there is something larger.
Yes,
At
that's right.
play, out, and I say that as a devout atheist. I am more and more. There's something else going on here that transcends what we can see and hear, but not
Right.
necessarily what we can feel and sense, and that is consciousness.
Yeah.
And I've become more and more cognizant of the fact that consciousness is that's a thing. There's something essential about it that just might transcend everything.
I don't know if this relates, but let me I want to try this short little story on and see what you think. We were in Paris, and my son Samuel, gosh, how many years ago was this? I don't know. He was maybe 9 or something. We're walking down to get on the metro. We all turn to look at the map to see what stop we need to stop on. Sam walks into the train. The train doors close. Any parent that's ever had anything like, you feel that at a level that's insane. I mean, it's just like,
oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
So Cheryl is trying to figure out how to stop the train from leaving and all of this, There's a lady, an older lady in the train car that just looks at us with her eyes, and without, she didn't speak English. We could tell from her eyes she was going to take care of him. It was weird, but it was, to me, it's like one of those little hints. Like there was something else going on, because we were one family in a place, and then she's in the train car. She sees what's going on. She looks and conveys to us, I got this. And then we go to the next train stop, and she's at the next train stop with Sam, just waiting there for us right where the car stops. And it's good. And I know this is a small example of what you're talking about, but to me,
no, it's not. There's
something bigger going on,
If you can tune into this thing, it's remarkable how attuned to it so many people are.
Yeah.
And when you suddenly, it's like collaboration.
Yeah, that's right.
When I first came to LA, jumping back to collaboration, I took a couple classes with the Groundlings.
Mm-hmm.
And funny, I'll digress for a second. When I first got to town, my name is Alan Katz, of course, spelled Alankatz. When I first got here in 1985, there was another Alan Katz who already was here and had been working here for years. Alan Allan Katz.
Oh wow!
He wrote for MASH. He wrote for the Carol Burnett Show, And as I got to town, this Alan Katz had he was a recognized guy. Everyone knew him. He was he was a real guy. He had written a script called The Hunchback of UCLA. And it was this funny comedy, and
yeah, I love it. I love the title.
And people love that script. It got made eventually as a thing called Big Man on Campus a bunch of years later. But anyway, at that time it was called Hunchback of UCLA, and people, when I first came to this town, people would make book meetings with me because they thought I was him. And then I'd walk in the door, and the first 2 times I wasn't clever enough, and they said, "We really love that script, the Hunchback of UCLA," and I go, "Oh, that's the other Alan Katz." And then they look at me like, "Wait, what? Who are you?
That's right.
Why'd we invite you?" But then I got smart, and the third time they said, "Really love that. Hunchback of UCLA." Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's right.
You like that? I think you're gonna like this other thing I got. Yeah. So, that's at least I got smart about that. When I took my first Groundlings class, the teacher of the class was named Phyllis Katz. It was Alan Katz's.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my gosh, no way.
So my first Groundlings class I took with Alan Katz's
so
sister,
good.
Phyllis. And she was a wonderful teacher. It was a great class. It was really great. But the thing about improv, now we finally get back to why I'm telling this story, is that it's yes and.
Yeah.
It's add information. Hey, I walk into the room. Hey, you like my hat? Yes, I love it. I love the 2 birds on it. What are their names? Oh, well, and so you're always adding information. The minute, hey, do you like my hat? Yes, and I love the tropical birds. There goes the scene. It just died. So improv works by really, we've got to get inside each other's heads almost.
Yes,
and
that's right.
And anticipate each other and then listen to each other. That's really at the heart of collaborating with people, which which ultimately, as I've lived, this takes me to the final lesson that I think the most important thing of all, no matter what, it just transcends everything, is love.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what's that line from the Beatles song, "The love you take is equal to the love you make," whatever that is. Yes, it is. You cannot take it with you. Be as rich as you like, you will not take the money with you. Yeah. As you go, as you pass from here to wherever there is, the only thing that you can take with you and know that it will sustain itself without you is love. People can take your money and piss it away in a heartbeat. Yeah,
and I think that old saying, love covers a multitude of sins as well. I was, when I was on that island in Honduras, I was in the middle of a story that, my country played a big role in. But so as I went in there was all sorts of stuff that was going on, around me that I was suddenly a part of. And it's like, well, how can I fix it? How can I fix everything? It's like, I can't fix everything. It's too huge. There's no way. I mean, much less in 3 months, even in a lifetime, I can't fix all of the problems. But what I could do, what we ended up doing that was probably the most significant there is that we took a number of pastors that were really under-resourced. I mean, the collapse of the work that had been done there, it was like, oh, so I'm on my own trying to run this thing without any kind of income, and I got to figure out how to make it all work. Well, what my roommate and I realized was just from some of the training we had gotten in a college group that we were a part of, that was more training than a number of them had had. So we just said, let's just start meeting together. We're going to give you what we got. It's not professional. It's not the best, but we can give you what we got because we do care for you. We do love you. And we want to see you succeed in what you've committed to do. So let's get together. We're going to share as best as we can. And to me, bottom line to me, that's what we can do in life, because we cannot solve all of the problems. But what we can do is engage the people that we're, that we're in relationship with or that are around us, and give them whatever it is we've got. I mean, and it may seem inadequate, and it probably is inadequate to solving the huge problems, but it can make a huge difference just to show up. That, I mean, what I've realized, just showing up.
Care enough to listen and listen enough to care.
That's right. That's right. And that was these other pastors, I realized over time, they felt loved by the fact that we gave up 3 months of our lives to live there when they knew we didn't have to. And that meant a lot to them. I didn't notice that until later, but it's like, that meant a lot to them. Just show up, be there, be willing to be in their life for a few months. They're not expecting anybody to come in like Superman and wish everything away. I mean, that's not what they want. That's not what they wanted. But to have somebody show up and be there for a period of time, that was good. And I've learned that even with people on their deathbed, as a pastor, just show up, be there, listen, love them. That's probably the most valuable thing you can do.
That's you and not just your money.
That's right. That's right. No, very much so. Because the money, I mean, really, it does help. It makes life very nice when you've got some money, but it's not the thing that people, are going to remember. I mean, I'm talking to people that are potential customers for what I'm developing. And when I ask them, what are some of the most important successes in your life? None of them yet have said, oh, when I made a big wad of cash. It's always the relationships I have, or the length of my marriage, or my kids, or a family vacation, or it's relationships and, love and being with people. That's the stuff that ends up being the stuff that really lasts, I think, for most people.
It is the smallest things that are the biggest at the end of the day. What occurred to me is that really my whole list, those 5 things, which encompasses yours, collaboration, which requires listening.
Yep.
Accepting that failure will teach you everything you need to know, and do not take your success seriously.
Mm-hmm.
It's good, but
celebrate it, but don't
understand that it is failure that will teach you the perspective you need to acquire the consciousness that will give you the wherewithal to love the most people as much as you possibly can, to going back to Tikkun Olam, really to make the world a better place just for having been in it. Mm-hmm. It's life is filled with lessons. It kind of leaves a one question though. Have we learned anything?
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's necessarily for us to say. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's easy for us to say. Yeah, I learned plenty. That really is for other people to.
I think that's really wise. I think that's the test of whether we've learned something. It's not that we say we have. It's what's the quality of the relationships that we leave behind. What impact have we had on other people's lives when once we're gone? I think that's the stuff that shows what we've learned or haven't learned. And I think just the pastor in me wants to tell people, if you feel like your life's been a train wreck thus far, I've met multiple people. Some of the most amazing, dare I say, virtuous people I've ever met were people who have done a lot of horrendous things, but they turned it around and they became deeper people because they learned from the disaster in their lives.
Damn.
And then they became deeper. So that's the crazy thing to me about life. And so wherever you are, you listeners, in your life, you may feel like it's a total train wreck, but guess what? That's the manure that can actually fertilize an amazing life. If you learn and turn it around and get your act and get other people, collaborate in another way. collaborate with other people who will help you get out of the crud that you're in.
Yes,
move forward,
if you reach out to other people,
Yeah.
then and they see the need, they will. Most of the time, provided you haven't burned every bridge you got.
That's right. That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
you got to take some ownership here.
That's right. That's right. That's essential to the learning. You've got to own. You've got to own what you've done and what you haven't done. You just have to own it. So don't hide.
Required. It is the one prerequisite.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And on that bombshell.
Well done, Alan. Way to pull it around to a final question that just tied it all up in a neat bow.
Just like life.
Yeah, just like life, all in a neat bow. It all makes total sense now. I get life completely now. I totally understand it. Thanks for that, Alan. I don't have any more questions about life anymore.
That's what I'm here for. We've solved all the problems. Our work here.
We're done here. We're done here. Yeah, so you all can have a great day knowing everything's been solved by listening to this podcast.
Great lives, everybody.
That's right. That's right. That's right. No, we think there are a few problems left, a few other things to discuss, and we actually have an amazing list of things.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to knock some of these out, and I know you all are gonna enjoy them too. So
we have some great conversations coming. Thanks for listening in on this one, and we look. Hey, let's do it again.
Let's do it. Let's do it. We'll see you again next week. All right.